Welcome back, everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about the fundamentals of healing ourselves and the central importance, I feel, of acceptance and forgiveness as this essential core emotion or mental state that we wish to sort of cultivate and build upon when we're sort of looking at a certain negative pattern that we have, something that we want to change or something that we want to improve. I really want people to sort of have at their foreground of their consciousness this unconditional acceptance of oneself, because you see often in self-help, self-improvement, much of our desire to heal or ascend or improve derives from this energy of profound dissatisfaction or a profound sense of lack or a sense of not liking ourselves, not liking this sort of aspect of ourselves, and consequently we want to change it. Now, underlying this emotion of not liking ourselves is this energy of shame, this energy of subtle resentment. We don't like this sort of thing. When we think about it, it sort of arouses in us these sort of uncomfortable feelings, and we want to avoid those uncomfortable feelings. And consequently, that motivates us to sort of try and change and put in positive improvements. But of course, we don't address that underlying feeling of shame, and that underlying feeling of shame will continue to persist unless we sort of fully address it, right? And this might seem sort of complicated because when we're trying to improve ourselves, how can we not feel this sort of this yuckiness when we look at the things that we aren't proud of or the things that we want to change? How can we sort of change that yuckiness to a form of acceptance? And also, some people may feel as though, like, if we accept ourselves unconditionally, then that's us sort of being quite passive and sort of rejecting the call to ascend. We're just sort of accepting ourselves, and that means we can just sort of relax, lay back, and not do anything to change ourselves. I want people to understand that they can accept themselves unconditionally whilst simultaneously moving towards greater peace and harmony, and the sort of the eradication of negative habits and patterns, and the formation of positive patterns, right? What I really want people to think about, or at least to try, is to bring to the foreground of their mind something that repeatedly conjures up shame for you. Whether it's something that you perhaps used to do in the past, or it's a form of addiction that you may have had, a form of the sort of person you used to be. Call those memories to your foreground and really feel into the shame and the negative resentment that you have for having been that type of person. Or perhaps it's the person that you are currently. Perhaps you feel a sense of shame for who you are right now. You're not where you want to be. I want you to sort of bring those experiential contents, or those conscious contents, because it is a form of consciousness that you're bringing, right? And I want you to sort of see if you can reformulate your consciousness, right, to bring this sort of energy of acceptance to that. Now, I want to make this really concrete and practical and understandable for you, right? How do we do this? This is a form of sort of, I suppose, rewiring of your subconscious, such that things that typically bring you shame no longer bring you shame, right? Let's say like you have an addiction. This is something I speak about a lot, right? And for many people, right, their addictions bring them a lot of shame because, of course, it feels as though you're just, you're weak-willed, or you're just sort of an overly indulgent, hedonistic person, and you can't control yourself, right? And often in the depths of addiction, we often do very shameful things we later come to regret. Now, I want you to sort of to visualize the person you were in the pits of the addiction, or visualize yourself currently if you are going through addiction. And I want you to forgive yourself, or forgive that past version of yourself. Like, just sort of look at yourself and say, I know I've made mistakes. I know perhaps I'm making mistakes, but that is okay because I am on this movement, this effort of healing. I want people to forgive themselves for, whatever they've done, And of course, forgiving yourself is not saying that, oh, this is acceptable behavior. But forgiveness, self-forgiveness, is the first and essential step in order to have a positive change. Because if we are sort of trying to change from the foundation of shame, the foundation of yuckiness, that feeling of yuckiness is going to bleed into all of our efforts to change in a sort of a profound sort of way. And to elucidate this into a sort of a more compelling example, right? A lot of people, like I said, they engage in self-improvement because they don't feel happy with the way they are currently. And sure enough, they do improve. Perhaps they improve their life, their relationships, yada, yada. But the fundamental feeling of dissatisfaction with their current self, that never gets addressed. And as a result, even when their life does change, even when their life does improve, they can't see the improvement because their perception is distorted, right? They're distorted into seeing all the ways in which things are not good or they're not enough. They have not cultivated the energy of gratitude or the energy of just unconditional acceptance, right? They're still in this perception of lack. And this is a very delicate thing to really explain, but I hope I've made it somewhat clear, right? Now, to come back to our sort of addiction example, right? The example of sort of improving and healing ourselves through the energy of forgiveness. An exercise that I tend to do sometimes is I'll enter sort of a yoga Nidra position where I'm just lying down, relaxing the body, releasing all the sort of the chronic tension and stress within my body. And sometimes perhaps I'll intentionally bring to my consciousness certain things that need to be processed, right? And a lot of sometimes these things will be memories of who I was when I was in the state of addiction, where certain memories which I haven't thought of in a while, they will sort of come to the foreground of my mind. And when they do, it's like sort of a movie is playing out within one's mind, and I'm looking at this sort of the screen of who I once was, but I'm holding that memory with this energy of acceptance and forgiveness for who I was, and that's fundamentally the way in which you sort of release these traumatic memories. What a lot of people tend to do when they have these sort of traumatic memories come into their consciousness, their body goes into this, fight or flight response. They stiffen up, they contract, they want to reject that experience. But obviously, you cannot reject the past, right? The past has happened, whether you like it or not. And our rejection of the past, when we stiffen up and we sort of get very agitated when these sort of memories come back, that doesn't release the memory, right? What it will do, it will keep it stuck in as this loop which makes you really agitated and frustrated, and ultimately it will sicken you. It sickens your body to be in that sort of agitated state. Now, what you really have to do is to learn to forgive yourself and learn to relax your consciousness, even whilst holding that sort of traumatic frequency, or that traumatic memory, rather. And now, obviously, this is a very difficult thing to do. This is why it requires time and dedication and a sincere motivation to heal oneself. Yes, it can seem scary to sort of have these sorts of things come back to your consciousness, but I assure you gain a powerful, capacity when you are able to relax your body and your mind while simultaneously sort of recalling such traumatic memories, or recalling these sort of negative patterns, these shameful patterns that you have. This is fundamentally a way of sort of rewiring your subconscious, like I said, to be in a sort of relaxed and attentive and aware state, right? And I suppose to have a sort of a leaving remark for you guys, you should sort of watch yourself throughout the day, stalk the self, like I've mentioned before, and watch what sort of memories or mental activity puts you into sort of an anxious, non-relaxed, agitated state. Watch those sorts of things and really inquire into why do these sorts of things make me feel a negative sort of way? Why do they disrupt my peace? And, really pull on that thread, right? And when you pull on that thread, when you introspect into such things, you come to learn a lot about yourself. And through that knowing, through that learning about yourself, you can then, come to a deeper, ability to change yourself. We don't just become aware of ourselves just for the sake of awareness. We become aware of ourselves so that we can change certain patterns within our consciousness so that there is more harmony and peace. That's the objective here. We're not introspecting for the sake of introspection. That becomes just sort of self-indulgence. We're introspecting so that we can, change certain features so that we can be better for ourselves and as well for the people around us. We should always remember that as the fundamental objective of, spiritual realization. We shouldn't, just sort of devolve into sort of narcissistic self-absorption. It should always be clearly aligned to sort of acting with more consciousness in the world, I feel. But anyways, that's a lot there. But that's been interesting and it's been insightful. And enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.